first noticed it in a Walmart parking lot. The kids had too much energy, so we went for an evening Walmart trip. As we walked back to the car, I noticed one of the street lights in the far corner blinking on and off. There's something about blinking street lamps that's inherently creepy. I don't know why. Maybe because we're involuntarily designed to be afraid of the dark, and blinking streetlights often go out. Or maybe it's because of the stop motion effect. There's a reason why haunted houses use strobe lights all the time. In any case, I found myself staring at it as we helped the kids in the car. And that's why I noticed something was off. As the car drove by the main road, the street light blinked off and there was something there that obscured the red taillights for just a split second. It happened so fast I thought I imagined it, especially when the light blinked back on an instant later and there was clearly nothing standing under it. I didn't think much of it and got into the car. As we pulled out onto the main road, glanced back at it, it was still flickering and something about it sent a chill up my spine. We pulled out onto the road and the light disappeared from view. The kids went right to bed, and then my husband and I were unwinding in the living room. I was flipping through pages on my Kindle when something caught my eye. The lamppost outside our house was blinking on and off. I walked over to the window. "What's up?" Charles asked behind me, when I'd been standing there a few minutes. "The light's flickering." "So?" "There was a street light flickering in Walmart parking lot too." I turned to him. "Isn't that weird?" "Not really." We went back to the snacks. Pushing out the uneasy feeling in my stomach, I started to turn away. "Wait." I turned back. There was a light on in the house across the street, but when the lamppost blinked off, the black edge of the window wasn't quite straight. I squinted at it. There was a bump, or a curve, almost like a semicircle, that was poking into the golden square of the illuminated window, like something was standing there, partially blocking out the window's light. Except nothing was there, because the shape disappeared every time the light blinked back on. "Charles, come back over here." "Do I have to?" "I see something weird. I don't know." I glanced back at him and frowned. He was leaning back in the recliner, feet up, stuffing himself with chips. "Please come over." "Alright." He heaved himself off the couch and came over. I described the curve to him, the little sliver of silhouette I was seeing. "I don't see anything, Princess." "You don't see it?" He shook his head. "There's nothing out there." I squinted again into the darkness, then I gave up and settled back in my book. Something woke me in the middle of the night. I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep, but then I heard it. A distinct thump coming from somewhere in the house. "Charles, I heard something," I said, shaking his shoulder. But I didn't wait for him to wake up. I flicked on the hall light and ran to the kids' room. My son, thankfully, was sleeping soundly. I left for my daughter's room and stopped dead. In the crack under the door, I could see a flickering bluish light. I grabbed the doorknob and burst inside. The nightlight, it was blinking on and off erratically, casting the entire room in jerky, stop-motion flashes. I ran over to the bed. Thank God my daughter was still there, sleeping peacefully. I glanced back towards the hall to look for Charles. I froze. There was a dark shape in the corner of the room. I could only see it for a moment when the nightlight flickered out. As soon as it came back on, the corner was empty. My heart pounded in my chest. I stared at the corner. Off. The shape was there. On. It wasn't. Off. The shape looked like someone crouched in the corner. On. It looked closer. Off. Oh God, it was closer. On. The intervals were getting longer. I was paralyzed. My breath was stuck in my lungs. Off. Fuck. It was halfway across the room. On. The light blinked on, remained on. That didn't give me comfort. I couldn't see it. It could be anywhere. It could be right in front of my off. I screamed. It was right in front of me, filling up my entire vision. I backed away, putting myself squarely between my daughter. Click. Yellow light filled the room. Baby? Charles stood in the doorway, bleary-eyed. I glanced around wildly, but the room was empty. The nightlight was still off. I leapt forward and pulled it out of its socket. It clattered to the floor. Then I began to sob as I told Charles everything. The next day, the whole thing seemed ridiculous. What I really saw a figure huddled in our house that disappeared in the light. It made no sense. It was much more likely that I'd been seeing some sort of sleep paralysis demon, or my half-awake brain misinterpreted shadows or something. But when I went into my daughter's room later, something caught my eye. 3 coarse, long black hairs lying on the carpet. And now as the sun is setting and the deep shadows of dusk are filling the house, I'm terrified to turn on any lights. Attention all shoppers. Came a male voice over the intercom. Please move to the back of the store immediately. The back of the store? I whispered to Daniel. Don't they mean the front of the store to pay for our stuff? It was 8:50 p.m., 10 minutes before closing time. We'd brought our 2 kids out on this late night Walmart excursion in hopes of burning off some energy. But instead they just thrown tantrums for new Legos and Hot Wheels. It was a disaster. But apparently, the disaster was just beginning. Please move to the back of the store immediately, the voice repeated overhead. This is not a drill. I glanced around, but the other shoppers were just as confused as I was. An old lady looked up at the ceiling, scrunching her face. What the hell? A dark-haired woman asked her boyfriend, pushing a cart full of garden supplies. Didn't you hear? An old man said, leaning over the cart of bottled water and canned food. We're in a tornado watch. 1 touchdown in Saurville. A tornado? It was definitely stormy outside. I'd seen the black clouds roll in from the east earlier, but it didn't look that bad. Do not stay out in the open. I repeat, do not stay out in the open. There was a pause. Then an explosion of sound. As everyone began to mobilize, carts rolling, panicked voices, feet slapping on the floor. No, this can't be happening. I hurried down the toy aisle, Tucker in my arms, Daniel and Jackson following me. 3 zigzaggy turns, and then we were in the electronics area. I glanced at the TVs on the wall and pictured the 4 of us crashed underneath them. Stay away from windows and doors, the voice continued on the loudspeaker, and do not attempt to exit the store. Is it safe here? Daniel shook his head. Big open areas aren't good. I'm gonna check in the back. See if there's a break room or something. You could stay here, okay? I nodded, arms shaking. I sat down on the ground between 2 shelves of video games. Tucker sucked on a bottle in my arms while Jackson began to giggle. Is a tornado going to hit the store? And everything will fly around real fast? He asked with a big stupid grin on his face. I don't know. A tornado. A real-life tornado, like you see in the movies, plowing through our town. It was so unfathomable. We were New York natives, transplanted here to Indiana only 6 months ago. I never been in a tornado watch my entire life. Daniel jogged back into view. Everything's locked up, he said, as he joined me on the floor. But listen, Fairville's a big town. The chances that it'll hit this Walmart, I think we'll be okay. I never should have brought us here. You don't know. None of us did. He wrapped his arm around me. They should have warned us, like an emergency alert on our phones, a tornado siren, or something, anything. The voice overhead rang out again through the store. Do not stay out in the open. Do not make yourselves visible. That includes security cameras. Please move to a spot that is not visible to any cameras. I frowned. What does that have to do with tornadoes? A feeling of unease in the pit of my stomach. I glanced up and saw several black globes descending from the ceiling, hiding the cameras within. I guess we should have listened to them to get out of sight, I whispered. I grabbed Jackson's hand, Daniel picked up Tucker, and we jogged out into the center aisles. The store was an eerie sight, abandoned shopping carts, askew in the aisles full of everything from pies to batteries to plants. Footsteps echoed around the store from people unseen as they found their hiding spots. We dodged the shopping cart full of soda. We ran through kitchenwares and then stopped in the Easter decoration aisle. There was a camera in the central corridor, but as long as we stayed in the middle of the Easter aisle, we'd be invisible. The four of us crouched on the floor next to some demented-looking Easter bunnies. I'm hungry, Jackson whined. Shh. Mommy. I grabbed a bag of colorful chocolate eggs and ripped it open. Here, candy. Happy? I whispered, thrusting them into his hands. Then I leaned back against the metal shelves, panting. But I didn't have long to rest. A mechanical whine overhead, and then the voice came through the speakers again. Keep away from idols with food. If you have food with you, leave it and move to a new hiding spot. If you have any open wounds, cover them with clothing. What the fuck? That had nothing to do with keeping us safe from a tornado. We should make a run for it, Daniel whispered to me, standing. But the tornado, I don't think there is a tornado. Listen, do you hear any wind? I listened, but all I heard was silence. No howling wind, no shaking ground, no projectiles clanging against the metal roof. Maybe it's still coming. I know what they're saying doesn't make any sense, but to go outside? We need to get out of here now. He grabbed Jackson's hand as he held Tucker in his arms. Come on. Daniel, I don't think this is a good idea, I whispered. But the next words from the intercom changed my mind. Assume a fetal position and place your hands over your head. Close your eyes and do not open them for any reason. Let's go. We broke into a sprint and ran down the central aisles, cameras being damned. The front door appeared in front of us, a little black triangle looming in the distance, and as we got closer, I saw Daniel was right. There was a tree at the border of the parking lot, under a street lamp. It was perfectly still. We continued running past the clothing aisle, but past the snacks lined up on the checkout lines. I ran towards the sliding glass door as fast as my legs could carry me. Almost there. The doors didn't open. No. Daniel slammed his body against the door. It rattled underneath him. I tried to squeeze my fingers into the gap between them to try to pull them apart, but they didn't budge. They locked us in, I whispered. I want to go home, Jackson said. Tucker was beginning to fuss too, making little noises like he was about to start full-on wailing. I turned around, and then I saw him, a Walmart employee. He was sitting on the ground at the end of one of those checkout aisles, facing away from us, wearing the familiar blue vest with a garden starburst. Hey, let us out. He didn't reply. Did you hear me? I don't care if there's a fucking tornado. Unlock the door and let us out. Again, he said nothing. But in the silence I could hear something. A wet smacking sound. I stared at the man, slightly hunched over, still facing away from me. Was he eating something? The speaker overhead crackled to life. Attention. Please do not talk to any Walmart employees. My blood ran cold. The smacking sound stopped, and then slowly the man began to stand. He placed his palms on the conveyor belt and pushed up. And all I could see was that they were stained with blood. I backed away, but my legs felt like they were moving through a vat of honey. No. Fingers locked around my arm and yanked. Come on, Daniel shouted. I sprinted after him, deeper into the store. Tucker stared at me over his shoulder, and Jackson ran as fast as his little feet would take him. I was vaguely aware of the slap sound behind me, but I didn't dare to look back. Daniel ran into the clothing area and I swayed, dodging circular racks of t-shirts and wooden displays of baby clothes. He stopped and ducked into the dressing room area. In here, he whispered, motioning at one of the doors. We piled inside and locked the door. Daddy, Jackson started. You listen to me very carefully, I said, crouching to his level. You have to be absolutely silent. Do not say a word, okay? Jackson looked at me, then Daniel. Then he nodded and sat on the floor. I'm gonna try to call 911, Daniel whispered, transferring Tucker to me and pulling out his phone. He tapped at the screen, then frowned. What? We don't seem to have any service. I grabbed Jackson and pulled him away from the door. The four of us huddled in the corner. I held my breath. Under the gap of the dressing room door, man's feet in black shoes. They slowly took a step forward, deeper into the dressing room. Don't move, I whispered, holding Jackson. The man took another step. Don't make a sound. Don't move. Don't. Tucker let out a soft cry. The man stopped. His feet turned, pointing at us. No. Tucker let out another cry, louder this time. My nails dug into Daniel's hand. No. A hand appeared. It slowly pressed against the floor, stained with blood, and then his knees appeared as he lowered himself down to the gap. Could he fit under? The gap wasn't small, it was like the stall door to a bathroom. If he flattened himself against the floor, there's a chance he could fit under. I watched in horror as his stomach came into view, his blue Walmart vest as he lowered his body to the floor. Then he pushed his arm under the gap and blindly swept it across the floor, as if feeling for us. This is it, we're gonna die. And then he lowered his head, his face. Oh God, there was something horribly wrong with his face. He smiled up at us with a smile that was impossibly wide, showing off blood-stained teeth. His skin was so pale it was nearly blue, and his eyes, they were milky white, without pupils or irises. I opened my mouth to scream. Attention, shoppers, the voice began overhead. Please make your way to the front of the store and make your final purchases. We will be closing in 10 minutes. What? And then, before I could react, something unseen jerked the man out of view. A strange dragging sound followed, as if someone was dragging his body out of the dressing room area. I stared at the door, shaking, as Tucker's cries rang in my ears. But he didn't come back. And within 10 minutes, the usual hub of Walmart returned. Voices, footsteps, shopping cart wheels rolling across the floor. Shaking, I finally got up and unlocked the door. The store looked completely normal. People were lined up at the cash registers, placing their goods on the conveyor belts. Employees were scanning tags, printing receipts. People walked towards the glass doors, and when they did, they slid open. As we slowly walked towards the exit, I spotted the old man who warned us about the tornado earlier. What was that? I asked, unable to keep my voice from shaking. He shrugged. I guess the tornado missed us. What a miracle, huh? Giving us a smile. He disappeared out of the glass doors and into the night. It was the summer of 1998 when I first encountered that thing. I was 17, living in a rural town in the middle of nowhere, and bored out of my mind. My family owned a small farmhouse, and just beyond it was a wide expanse of cornfields that stretched for miles. It was the kind of place where nothing ever happened, until it did. One evening, I was sitting in the living room when I heard something strange. It wasn't the typical hum of the night, nor the soft rustles of the corn. It was a slow, deliberate scratching, like nails scratching against glass. I looked out the window, thinking it was just a branch, but there was no trees near my window. Nothing but the field, waving gently in the wind. I ignored it. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but every night, around the same time, the scratching would start again, and each time it got louder and louder. By the fourth night, I couldn't sleep. I told my parents, but they shrugged it off, saying it was probably some animal. One night, the sound was unbearable. I grabbed the flashlight and went outside, determined to find whatever was making it. The air was thick and humid, the kind of night that clings to your skin. I made my way towards the edge of the cornfield, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the dark like a knife, and I saw it. At first I thought it was a scarecrow. There, at the edge of the field, stood a figure, tall, hunched, and barely visible against the dark sky. It didn't move, didn't sway in the wind like the corn, just stood there, watching. I aimed the flashlight at it, expecting to see fabric and straw, but what I saw made my blood turn cold. The figure wasn't a scarecrow. It was human. Or at least it had the shape of one. Its skin was pale, too. Almost too pale. Like something that hadn't seen sunlight in years. Its eyes were large, round, and reflective, catching the light from my flashlight like an animal's eye in the dark. But the worst part was its mouth, hanging open, unnaturally wide, stretching across its face in a grotesque, silent scream. I froze, unable to move or even breathe. The figure just stood there, watching me with that horrible, gaping mouth. Then it moved. Not like a person would. It didn't walk. It seemed to glide, sliding silently through the field, the corn parting as it moved towards me. I turned and ran faster than I ever thought possible. Behind me, I could hear the rustling of the corn. Faster now, as if it were right on my heels. The sound grew louder and louder, that same horrible scratching noise. But this time it wasn't just against the glass, it was right behind me. I burst through the door of the house, slamming it shut and locking it. My heart was pounding, my breath ragged. I ran to my parents, yelling about what I saw. They rushed to the window, but of course there was nothing, just the still empty field. But I knew what I saw. The next morning I woke up to find deep, jagged scratches on my bedroom window. Long, parallel lines etched into the glass, as if something or someone was trying to get in. I never saw the figure again after that night, but the feeling never left. Every time I passed the cornfield, I could feel it watching, waiting just beyond the edge of the tall stalks. I moved away that moment I could, never looking back. Years later, I heard a story from someone in the neighboring town. They said that there had once been a farmer who lived near the edge of those same fields. He disappeared without a trace, leaving nothing behind but his empty farmhouse and a strange, scratched-up window. They say he was taken by something that still watches the field, waiting for the next person to catch its attention. I never went back to find out if it was true, but if you ever find yourself near an empty cornfield at night and you hear scratching at your window, don't look outside. Whatever it is, you don't want to see it. I've been able to see ghosts since I was little. Mom always thought that I was making it up, but I could see them clear as day. At least, I thought they were ghosts for a while. Once I got to about 9, I realized some of them were something else, something more evil, demons. Then, when I hit puberty, I got my power. It started with my eyes. My irises were brown before, but by the time I was 14, they were nearly pure black. Then came the fire. Mama was constantly telling me I had a fever, keeping me home from school, stuffing pills down me. I can stand outside in the snow at 10-degree weather, wearing short sleeves and jeans, and not feel cold. The heat doesn't affect me. I can work in the sun at 110-degree weather and barely break a sweat. Fire burns brighter when I'm around. It's very hard for me to be burned by anything, even hot metal. And I could stand so close to a bonfire that the flames lick at me and not feel the heat. When I'm wounded, it heals entirely within a couple of days. I have super high endurance and can stay up for days without being tired. Although, that might be the programmer part of me. Except for when I kill a demon. That drains me. Oh, I let that out. Yeah, I can control the demons now. Although usually they're trying to kill me, so I have to kill them. Take last night as an example. It was midnight. I was still awake like usual. I rarely fell asleep before 1 a.m. anymore. Since laying in bed staring at the ceiling was doing no good at all, I silently creeped out of my bed and went outside. It was pitch dark, but I didn't mind. Darkness had always comforted me. It made me feel even more alive. My senses were heightened. My heart rate went up a little and I felt peace. Peace and adrenaline at the same time. Paradoxical. Yeah, I know. But I love it. Sitting there on the wooden steps with a cat on each side of me felt like palace guards. I leaned back and looked up at the starry sky above me. It was beautiful. I loved the sheer dark openness of space. Made me feel free, like I wasn't being crowded. I got to enjoy my peace for a while. Then I felt it. Something was watching me and it wasn't good. I know an evil presence when I sense one. I, very slowly, turned my head to the right, where I sensed the presence. A pair of bright yellow eyes blinked at me from 6 feet off the ground. Fuck. I snapped upright, jumped off the stairs and stood up, shifting to a fighting stance. My cats ran to hide under my car. They knew they were no match for this thing. I looked into its yellow eyes and growled. A deep, rough, dark, strangely inhuman sound. It blinked again and moved towards me, then stopped. I advanced towards it, now able to see its outline. It reminded me of an alien, like one of those grays, but it wasn't an alien, it was something darker, a demon. It looked confused now. Its eyes turned darker, almost orangey red, and my eyes turned black with flecks of flame orange, almost as if they had fire behind them. I growled again, louder. The demon stepped back and took another step forward. Now I had it backed up against the wall of the house. It had nowhere to go. I could feel my body heating up, my power getting stronger. I waited, the orange in my eyes burning brighter until I was at full strength. It took only a few moments. I torched the wood of the porch. My fingers left char marks. Excellent. In a different voice than my natural one, deeper, more primal, I said, "Time for you to go home." And I reached out and tapped the demon's chest, where its heart should be. Its eyes turned dull black, like burnt wood, and it vaporized with a grating, eerie scream. I was exhausted now. I went back into the house and fell into bed, passing out as soon as my head hit the pillow. If these demons don't stop trying to get me soon, I'm gonna go into a coma. Okay, well, I suppose exhaustion is a small price to pay for keeping the world, or at least my town, safe from whatever these creatures or the underworld gives. And having this cool firepower is a definite plus. I still sometimes wish it wasn't me, though. It's a lonely existence. Everyone telling you that you make things up when you know damn well that however unbelievable it is, your life and your power is real. I'm posting this here in hope of finding someone who will believe me and maybe finding out what I am. If you don't understand this any more than I do, I'll take any help I can get. I never should have bought it. That bag, its texture, its warmth. Something about it felt so wrong from the moment I touched it. But I was too memorized by its strange beauty. I found it in an old antique shop, hidden behind dusty shelves. The shopkeeper barely glanced at me as I picked it up, murmuring something about how it had been there for years, untouched. I should have left it there, in the darkness where it belonged, but I didn't, and now I'm paying the price. It started small, little things at first. I thought I was imagining it, you know, those small creepy feelings you get when you're alone, like the air shifts or shadows bend just a little bit differently. Yeah, like that, but it didn't stay small for long. After the first night, I began hearing faint whispers. They were soft, barely noticeable, like someone calling my name from another room. I'd searched the house, but it was always empty. The bag was always where I'd left it, sitting quietly in a corner like a patient predator. On the third night, I heard and felt my first nightmare. I dreamt of a girl, her skin peeled away, her face contorted in pain and rage. She stood at the foot of my bed, her eyes hollow, her lips whispering things I couldn't understand. I woke up in a cold sweat, and there, sitting next to me on the bed, was the bag. I hadn't put it there. It had moved on its own. I was too scared to touch it, too scared to throw it away. I couldn't sleep. The whispers grew louder every night, creeping into my thoughts, turning every dark corner of my mind into a nightmare. My house, it changed too. The windows would fog up without reason. The mirrors would crack and when I wasn't looking. And every time I checked my reflection, I swear I saw her, the girl from my dreams. Aisha. I later learned her name was. The name came to me in a whisper, like the wind spoke it. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I needed help. Desperation led me to a shaman, an old woman who lived on the outskirts of town. I didn't believe in such things before, but I couldn't deny what was happening. Something unnatural had latched itself onto me, and the bag was the center of all of it. The moment the shaman laid eyes on the bag, her face twisted in horror. Her hands trembled as she reached out to touch it, pulling back at the last second. "You have no idea what you brought into your home," she whispered, her voice thin with fear. I tried to explain everything, the whispers, the dreams, the moving bag, but she stopped me, shaking her head. "This bag, it's not just cursed, it's evil. It was made from the skin of a girl named Aisha, killed by her best friend out of jealousy. The friend, Samantha, believed she could steal Aisha's beauty by wearing her skin, but the act twisted her soul. What she didn't realize was that Aisha's spirit was bound to it, and her vengeance consumes anyone who possesses it." My throat went dry. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Vengeance?" I stammered. The shaman nodded, her eyes wide and filled with terror I had never seen before. "Samantha's entire household was slaughtered by the bag. It's cursed, feeding on the lives of those who own it. Aisha's rage will not stop until she's taken back what was stolen." I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, heavy. "What do I do? Can't you help me?" The old woman's face darkened. "There's no undoing what has been done. You must destroy it." "How?" She shook her head, already looking defeated. "You can't. People have tried. Fire, water, even burying it in deep in the earth. It always comes back. The only thing you can do is run as far as you can, but even then, I'm not sure you can outrun her." I left home in a panic, clutching the bag in my hands, unsure of what to do. The street seemed darker as I walked, every shadow seeming to stretch out towards me. I could feel it. Aisha was close. She was watching. That night I tried to leave the bag outside, thinking maybe I could abandon it. But the moment I stepped back into the house, it was there, sitting in the middle of the room, waiting. The whispers were louder than ever, now calling my name over and over again. I don't know what to do. Every time I close my eyes, I see her, Aisha, her skinless body, her hollow eyes filled with hate. The bag seems to move closer on its own, inching towards me, always a little closer when I'm not looking. I could feel it tightening around my mind, like a noose I can't escape. The shaman was right. There's no escaping this. The bag will take me, just like it took Samantha and everyone else. I just hope someone reads this before it's too late. If you ever find an old leather bag in a forgotten shop, no matter how beautiful it seems, don't touch it, don't buy it, don't take it home. It will find you, and when it does, there will be no escaping its curse. When me and my girlfriend Jenna moved into this new apartment, we were in high hopes of making it big in the YouTuber world. Our paranormal investigations channel had grown to 10,000 subscribers in a matter of a few months, and we were hopeful we could turn it into another 100,000 very soon. We moved into this new place because of the numerous haunting locations nearby that we could film and investigate. The town was filled with ghost stories told by interesting people who claimed them to be real. "I already love this place," Jenna said, settling into the spooky vibes of the new world we found ourselves in. "Me too, baby," I replied, looking out the window, taking in the view of the town soaked in musical rain. What I didn't know at the time was that my wish for finding proof and belief in the paranormal was soon going to come true. but in a way that was too personal to be safe. We worked late that night, excitedly preparing lists of places we can go for shooting our videos and setting our targets for the YouTube channel. After we had scheduled our work for the entire month, we simply took a breath of satisfaction and went to bed. We, however, were not fated to an entire night of sleep, and were disturbed by a noise coming outside of our bedroom door. "What the fuck?" I blurted out as I heard a soft wailing coming from the living room. I pushed my girlfriend awake, and just as she was about to ask me why I woke her up, she heard it too. We both sat up on the bed and stared at the bedroom door for a few minutes while I decided my next move. "Let me check it. It was probably nothing," I said, and got up calmly, even though my heart sounded like a drum beating against my chest. There was no object I could pick up as a weapon in the room, so I just knocked on the door. "Is anyone there?" I asked in a bold voice. "We should call the cops," Jenna said, clearly sensing this wasn't nothing. I brushed her off and opened the door slightly and took a peek, and my heart stopped. What I was staring at made absolutely no sense. Through the moonlight coming from the windows, I could make out a tall man standing in the kitchen, wailing and hitting his arms on our fridge. I stared at him for a few long minutes, the questions of my girlfriend failing to register in my head, and then I noticed. The man had no head and no hands. He kept crying and hitting his headless arms on the fridge again and again and again, while I stared at it absolutely numb and terrified at the same time. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jenna said with gritted teeth, and pulled me back into the bedroom with a jerk and closed the door. "What did you see? Are we in danger?" I don't know," I said simply and calmly, the words not justifying the array of terrifying emotions I felt at this time. It was hard to breathe, and my eyes were now lined with tears. Jenna was visibly concerned and wanted a signal to call for help, but I shook my head. "Just sleep," I told her, and got back into the sheets, and I slept. The night for me hosted a very long nightmare in which I kept asking into the void just one thing. If he had no mouth, how was he wailing? The next morning, I was woken up by Jenna, who brought me toasted bread and boiled eggs. "Honey, what happened last night?" she asked, concerned. "I checked outside in the morning. Nothing has been stolen. Please tell me what you saw." I just sighed and told her about what I saw last night. I went numb. "I'm sorry. We should have called for help," I said. She held me tight and comforted me. She then handed me my breakfast, then went to the other side of the bed, put down her laptop, and started typing away. I ate my breakfast while she worked for around 10 minutes, and then she screamed, "What?" I looked at her suddenly, trying to figure out what happened. She turned to me and smiled, the biggest smile I've ever seen on her face. She brought me her laptop and showed me what she had been doing. She had put a post on social media asking if anyone knew anything about a headless man from our town, and got a lot of replies, which were all mostly bullshit. But then she received an email. The person who sent the mail claimed to have lived in the town and mentioned the address he used to live at, and it was ours. He lived at our house. I stared at my girlfriend in disbelief while she pointed at me to continue reading. The rest of the email said he had got visited by the headless man daily, and the only thing you can do against him is to ignore him by just opening the fridge. The email claimed that the headless man was there to get a midnight snack. "What the fuck?" I whispered as I finally finished reading the email. "I mean, let's see if the solution works. But why are you so giddy? We are being haunted by a creepy guy?" Jenna just made a disappointed face and said, "We will record him." We have been going here and they are trying to script fake paranormal events, but this is the real deal. This is what will make us famous. Someone else has dealt with it too, so we can as well. We could just do what he did. I was a bit skeptical, but if I'm being honest, I was excited too. I know it is weird and hard to explain how being haunted by a man with no head can lead us being happy and cheerful, but you have to remember we have worked our entire lives with horror. Once we got a bit used to this new truth, it was easy to ignore the dangers of it. So we set up cameras in our kitchen and opened the fridge door at 10 a.m. before retiring to bed. We both took shifts sleeping, with one person staying guard for when the man returns, but he didn't. A month passed by and we didn't get any work done. Our subscribers were complaining about us not posting any content, and we had started losing subscribers who thought we had killed the channel. But we were hopeful that one day the man would return, and he did. That night I had stayed awake till 2 a.m. and then could not hold off my sleep for any longer, so I woke up Jenna and took my turn to sleep. And then I woke up in the morning with Jenna nowhere in the room. My instincts jumped into place suddenly and I called for Jenna. I ran outside and saw that the kitchen door was now closed and everything looked normal. I called Jenna on the phone but found it in the bedroom. She was nowhere to be seen, and so I did what I feared I would have to do to find the truth: see the camera recording. The camera recorded nothing strange until 2:53 a.m. But then the camera flashed all white, and when it showed our kitchen again, the man was there. The man wailed with no head and kept banging his arms on the fridge, even though the door was open. If he was here for the snack, why wouldn't he just take it? Jenna must have asked the same question, I imagined, because I saw her head peeking out from the bedroom door. For some reason I will never know, she decided to walk outside, her feet trying to hold her back because of the terror I'm sure she must have felt. She walked to the kitchen and simply stood in front of the man, not saying or doing anything. The man, no. The monster took notice of her, and even though he had no eyes to see, I know he saw her. And what happened next has crushed my heart forever. Jenna must have came to her senses after a while and started backing away into the bedroom. But as she made it through the hallway, the figure let out a piercing scream and hopped weirdly to Jenna, his arms flailing around in every direction. He pinned her down, the camera flashed, and when it came back there was no man and no Jenna. I know I'm to blame for what happened to Jenna. I slept that night despite knowing the dangers. My heart is broken now, but I find some comfort and hope that this story reaches someone who needs to hear it. And the person understands that the headless man is there for a midnight snack. But not the snack in the fridge. The snack is you.